Welcome to the Profits on Purpose podcast. I am your host, Nate Littlewood, and in today's episode, I am joined by Charlynda Scales, who is a remarkable woman, wears many hats, including being a founder. She's also an author, keynote speaker, Air Force veteran, and startup advisor. Among the many things that I learned from this conversation was Charlynda's remarkable ability to find positive moments through some of the entrepreneurial journeys and life's hardest moment. In my opinion, she has a real gift at looking at some of these challenging moments and rock bottom moments, as she calls them, and finding a way to turn them around and finding a way to learn from them, grow from them, and improve herself from them. Anyway, I really hope you'll enjoy this conversation. I had a blast speaking with Charlynda, and let's dive in. Charlynda, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
Of course. I guess first question, before we dive into some of the content we have to talk about today, is there anything I missed in your introduction there? It seems like you have so much going on. Any important parts that I skipped over there?
I think the one hat that I wear the proudest is I'm a mom of one. My son, David, is 5.
Awesome. Amazing. So a very busy woman indeed. Well, Charlynda, I wanted to get started here and I guess lay the foundations for folks and introduce you to them. One of the things that I have found most intriguing about you is your ability to learn, reflect, and grow from the many challenges that life and the entrepreneurial journey has kind of thrown at you over the years. Was that a skill that you always had, or is it something that you kind of learned along the way?
I think it's 2 parts. One, I'm always reflecting on, can I do something better, or what did this moment teach me? But also life experience has taught me not to discount the lessons of rock bottom moments or things not going exactly as planned, but I'm always reflecting. So I don't think that part was taught. That's just who I am.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And your business, Mutt, is a very interesting story. Could you give us a quick background on how you came to be doing that, and maybe just quickly touch on the Shark Tank experience too while we're here?
Sure. So it's been a long journey. I am a founder now of 2 for-profits and a nonprofit, my first company of which was Mutt. And I'll preface this with, I'm a country girl from Tennessee. So I'm a very family-oriented person. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather was a Korean Vietnam War veteran. His call sign was Mutt. So if anyone's not familiar with the military, a call sign is something you get as a nickname that somehow represents your personality or something you've been known for. And he was a very adaptable personality. He had friends all over the world, and he would usually break bread by making this sauce that he created in 1956. It's just like a red tomato-based sauce in a mason jar, and it was always there. And he was passionate about it. He was passionate about serving people. He was passionate about bringing the family together. And he was the person who made this recipe. So when people see Mutt sauce, where does it come from? I named it after my grandfather, and it was his recipe. And I'm just executing what I think his dream would have been. My grandfather also was diagnosed with cancer when I was in high school. So right when I had graduated from high school, I told him that I was going to pay for college with the Reserve Officer Training Corps scholarship. That means they're paying for college and then you owe the equal amount of time in military service after. Mm-hmm. And at that point, he got very emotional, and I didn't quite understand that it was a legacy that I'm going to pass down in our family that he's not going to be able to see. He's not going to be able to witness. But he did. He fought cancer for 4 years. He was the first person to salute me on active duty. So I got the recipe for this from my grandfather 8 years after he passed. And my mother had been holding on to it my entire military career, just waiting for a time that she thought was appropriate to hand it to me. So what people see is not just a line of barbecue sauces. It is me, picking up the baton, of someone's passion and love for family, and how do I take care of my family and bring people together the way that he did with this sauce recipe. So that's what it represents, and that's why it's named Mutt sauce.
And what about the Shark Tank experience? Tell me how that came about, and I guess more importantly, what did you learn from all that?
Shark Tank was probably the most impactful thing that you can experience as an entrepreneur. And mine happened when I had really no clue what I was doing. So when I started the company in 2013, we went to Shark Tank 6 months after that. So I was a brand new founder when I went to Shark Tank. I had just done my first run of 700 bottles hand poured by the Amish. And in the small footprint of the town that I was in, Beaver Creek, we had sold $30,000 worth of sauce in just a few mom and pop stores. I went to a conference and they said Shark Tank is in the building. It was such a whirlwind. I think I was number 500 pitched that day. I did the pitch. It was about two minutes, and then they call you. So it's a lot of like, you haven't made it. And then the next thing you know, you're going to Hollywood. And I was still on active duty, so people didn't realize I'm still in my uniform. I'm still serving my country. So there are a couple things that I think in hindsight, I could see Shark Tank was something that as an active duty person, I can't tell them that I'm going to quit my full-time job. I didn't get a deal. But when you're there, you have to know your numbers. You have to be disciplined. You have to have a plan. You have to be ready to negotiate. And some of those things take years to cultivate that I'm learning in a short amount of time. And even afterwards, they said, don't quit because you're only 6 months in. There's not a whole lot of data you can give us, but you had enough that it made it impressive enough to be in front of us. So I took that feedback, and then 8 years later, I wanted to pitch to Damon John, who is a Shark Tank investor. I won a contest 4 years later. Bob Evans, Heroes of CEOs, and my mentor was Damon John. So I tell people, it all comes back. You just got to keep going.
It was a full circle. It just took a number of years to play out by the sounds.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about the entrepreneurial journey, which I know is something that you're very passionate about. You've actually got a book about this, which is full of all sorts of wisdom on the topic. But I want to talk specifically about some topics that are broadly related to, imposter syndrome, shall we call it. So one of the things about entrepreneurship is that sometimes there is this need to kind of put on a bit of a show and pretend that we have got our, what together and that everything's fine and we're in control and we know exactly what we're doing. But even though deep down, like we know that it's an absolute crap show and there's chaos behind the scenes, how do you balance the need to really put on a show and, give the act versus be vulnerable and authentic and kind of share with people, the madness that is actually going on inside?
That's a good question, Nate. I don't subscribe to balance, but one thing that I felt was a pivotal moment as an entrepreneur is when I had a mentee say, everything must have gone perfectly for you. And they were struggling and they couldn't really relate because they thought she's never talked about anything bad. So she obviously has just had great things, Shark Tank and Bob Evans, and she's winning grants and she's always out there is congratulations for something. And many people, especially entrepreneurs, experience public triumphs and private torture. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they're going through rock bottom, and that's why I wrote Rock Bottom Has a Trampoline, because one, you're not built to hit rock bottom and stay there. You're meant to do great
Mm-hmm.
things. But two, rock
Mm-hmm.
bottom is not
Mm-hmm.
something you can really avoid, especially as
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneur. You can't avoid rock
Yeah.
bottom. You have to learn how to handle rock bottom. And I had a
Mm-hmm.
unique perspective, I think, as a military veteran, because we do what's called compartmentalization. So, say for instance, you're in a hostile environment.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much going on. It's chaos all around you, but you have a mission that you have to get done. So you put all the emotions in a box, and you're like, I have to come back to that later. I have to unpack
Mm-hmm.
that later. Right now, I just have to get this job done.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think spilled over to how I lead, because I have to put things in a box. When I won Bob Evans, I was also a
Mm-hmm.
proud military spouse. Told everybody how great it was
Mm-hmm.
to be a military spouse, and then
Mm-hmm.
abruptly left the marriage a week later. That was never on my plan to be a single person after getting married. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
making that decision, knowing that in public everything was great, there were so many people cheering for you and dedicated to you doing well. And so I would just say you will heal from transparency, but I understand
Mm-hmm.
nobody talks about rock bottom when they're in rock bottom. They have to
Right.
get through it first. And so I
Mm-hmm.
give people grace that if and give yourself some grace. So if you're going through it, it's not always a time to be like, hey, look at me, I'm at rock bottom. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to do that. Um,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
okay. But eventually,
Mm-hmm.
yes, your testimony is going to save somebody.
Can you expand on that a bit? Your testimony is going to save somebody. What do you mean by that?
Yes. There's people who are going through rock bottom, or they think that their rock bottom is unique, that
Mm-hmm.
nobody has ever been through that before. Nobody would
Mm-hmm.
understand having to juggle motherhood and a full-time job and running
Yeah.
companies and being divorced and all those things. And it's not till you put yourself out there and tell your story and tell them. I have had days when there was negative $1,500 in my account and I owed everybody on the planet. And
Mm-hmm.
I had 3 interviews that day where I had to say, everything is great. I love it. I love this. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you, everyone who supported me. I have
Mm-hmm.
had moments where my son was born in March 2020 at the beginning of the global pandemic, and I had zero
Wow.
projected revenue. And yet, when I took to
Mm-hmm.
social media, I'm encouraging people and telling them you're going to make it. It's halfway coaching myself, like you're going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
spite of those things, you have to show up, because it's not showing up for you. Your,
Yeah.
I believe your journey here is not to hoard talent and awards. You're
Mm-hmm.
here to help other people. You are a
Mm-hmm.
baton that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
handed to someone else of encouragement to tell them, uh, you've been stuck for years, but I'm here to tell you that today is the day that you realize your
Mm-hmm.
worth. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's I think what it's all for. That's why you tell your story.
Yeah. I love that. You, the military background that you mentioned there and how that has influenced your approach to compartmentalize is really interesting. And I think something that maybe other founders can learn a lot from. I wanted to spend a little more time on that. I'm imagining your day that you just mentioned, where you had these 3 interviews and you had to jump on a phone call or video call, whatever, and tell this story about, hey, everything's great, like Mutt Sauce is amazing, like we're killing it, blah blah blah. But in between, there's moments where you're dealing with complete chaos and a mess behind the scenes. I don't know about you, but I mean, I've had days like that, and I have found it really, really stressful to go back and forth like that, to show up on a call and be authentic and convincing, when in the back of your head, you know that you've only got, $1,500 or whatever you said in the bank. Like, I found that really hard, and I can have a whole day where it's all good or a whole day where it's all bad, but going back and forwards multiple times a day, I imagine is incredibly stressful. Is there any insights you have, whether it be from your experience in the Air Force or elsewhere, any tricks that you've learned along the way that have made that process easier for you at all?
Sure, yeah, Nate. I don't subscribe to balance, but I do subscribe to over communicating. That's usually the hardest thing is to voice that things are not great. But I try to make a habit of voicing that to at least one person. So there's someone who knows my real situation. That gives me a relief at the end of the day that I've pushed through, but there's someone who's there to encourage me. It's like, I know the world thought today was a good day, but I know it was not a good day. And let me get it out of my system. Over communicating about where your focus needs to be, because I think when I'm working with small business owners and I'm trying to give them business goals, I have to first look at their life because their personal life is going to affect their ability to execute their business effectively. They're navigating breakups, they're navigating not having financial literacy. So when they get funding, they're not being responsible with it. So I just try to tell them you have to over communicate with people who are going to be affected by you. And you have to be open to getting feedback on that. And you need to have a safe space to tell them the things that you're not good at or when you're not holding it together very well. I think recently what gives me a perspective is as a mother, I've learned that you don't just have a bad day. I tell you, I haven't had a bad day since my son arrived because of the perspective I was given that a bad day for you is your child's childhood. So we may toss, every day is like
Right.
I'm stressed out, and you walk through the door, I'm stressed out, I'm stressed out. But that is shaping someone's world and their childhood. So that they ask, what was it like growing up? Mom or dad worked around the clock, and when they walked through the door, their face looked like they were just tired. So and you ask me what helps
Yeah.
you put on a brave face, is like because one, I'm motivated by giving my son a great childhood. And so no matter how hard that day was, I'm gonna give him a good childhood and not the stressed out, tired mom.
Yeah.
I will communicate with him like when he understands mommy worked a long time or mommy has to work, but I don't want him to feel the effects of it. Of I'll take on the stress. I'm not
Interesting.
gonna give it to him.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Wow. I'd never thought too much about that. I don't have kids personally, but that is a really interesting perspective on how children can change things for you. That makes a lot of sense. In your book, you talk a lot about trauma and some of the life events that you went through. And candidly, I was surprised at times at how much you went on to share. Can you talk a little bit about how trauma can impact us as entrepreneurs, how it may have impacted you personally as an entrepreneur, and what are some of the things that you've learned along the way about dealing with trauma?
Yeah. Well, there's different types of trauma, right? There could be childhood trauma, trauma from experiences on jobs, trauma in society, interactions with people. And I have experienced, you've read it, I've experienced a little bit of everything. And I think it's just becomes a choice at some point to let it define you. And I don't want the trauma to really define me. I would like to harness it to help the next person. Um, I could wallow all day long. I could say, woe is me. This X, Y, or Z happened to me. Uh, I had a lot of trauma that I experienced from the military. I think in the book I talked about the California wildfires. I was in my 20s, Nate. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is not a
Mm,
typical job you would give a 20-year-old of like California's burning to the ground and you have the only
mm,
firefighting program in the Air Force. And there's a
mm-hmm.
governor going on the news talking to anyone who will listen that we need federal support and send out help immediately. And if you didn't do it fast enough,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get blasted for it. And that level of
Mm,
stress, like every day that we had not extinguished all the fires, I would be imagining
mm-hmm.
people dying and people losing their homes and something you're seeing it on TV
Mm,
and
mm,
that affects me greatly. I mean, when I make decisions as a leader, I tend to think of the worst case scenario. So I am definitely a worst case
mm-hmm.
scenario and then backwards plan from that. That affected me in that
Mm,
way. It manifested that way. Relationships have been through a lot. I feel like I did not take the time to get to know myself. So the lesson I'm learning now is you have to have the self-actualization of knowing who you are and being unapologetic about who you are. Because if you try to change yourself,
mm-hmm.
then that's gonna just make it worse for you that you're not able to show
Mm-hmm.
up and be yourself. And I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
learn that being in a relationship. It actually had to come at the
Mm,
heels of my divorce to start
mm-hmm.
really getting to self-actualization. So that's, there's
Mm-hmm.
different ways you can experience trauma, but life is the best way to like show you this is how to use it. This is why this
Mm-hmm.
happened. It didn't happen for your life to be ruined. It happened to shape you into the person who's going to make an impact somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I like that. Let me follow with a question about imposter syndrome, which is something that a lot of us entrepreneurs have dealt or deal with regularly as well. How has that manifested for you? And what are some of the ways that you've learned to manage it or leverage it or, turn it into a positive?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome, I definitely had a lot of that. I call it the inner critic in my book, where I
Mm-hmm.
I really struggled with feeling qualified. Like I felt like there were prerequisites because when I got the recipe from my grandfather, he was no longer here. So I lacked the
Mm-hmm.
validation that I was seeking at the time. Like, is it okay? Am I doing the right thing? He's not here to validate me, so I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
I should do it. My mentor from SCORE, he said this should be a manufactured product and you should just jump into manufacturing tons of bottles of this. And I said, I'm in the military. I don't know anything about food business, the food industry. I'm the worst cook in my
Yeah.
family. I went through this whole like self-doubt on overload.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
when you have the first production, you look back on it, and we did that from concept to first production in like 4 months. So when you look back on it,
Mm.
you kind of feel a little foolish, like that I had put up all these walls. The only thing stopping me was me. And you would
Yeah.
think that one experience like that would make it click for you, but it's something I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I kept dealing with for a decade. Am I good enough?
Mm.
Should I take different positions? Comparing myself to people I thought were great. But what it really boils down to are a couple things. One, you don't have to feel qualified to be qualified. If you can see it, you
Mm-hmm.
can do it. And then three, stop putting yourself in a box. So when I look back on that first production, and uh, I really felt foolish for a second because I said, well, one, we did this in 4 months. So I learned a couple things. The first one was you don't have to feel qualified to be qualified to do what you want to
Mm-hmm.
do. If the opportunity presents itself to you, if you can see it, then you can do it. Feeling
Mm-hmm.
qualified is not a prerequisite. And then two,
Mm.
if you look at some of the people who are in rooms that you want to be in or sitting at tables that you've always wanted to sit at, you'll be very surprised. And I'm surprised now because I'm in these rooms and sitting at these tables that one of the main things that got some of these people in the room was just the audacity to believe they belonged there. And
Interesting.
right, it wasn't that they were the smartest person or the expert on anything. It was just they saw that this is a position that no one has taken up, or this is an opportunity that no one has taken advantage of. And they're like, I'm gonna do it. I'll be the one. I will ask for that amount of money. I will start this company. I will launch this product. And they just hit go. They just execute.
Yeah.
And I had seen in my own
Interesting.
experiences where I kept saying, I want to do something, or I'm working on this, or I'm thinking about that. Meanwhile, people are just zooming past me because they are executing. They're not sitting there making checklists of all the things I need to do first. They just go. And
Yeah.
and
Interesting.
now I think that's where I'm at. I'm just like, just execute it. Because if it's on your mind, then it's supposed to be in the world in some form or fashion. Maybe you're here to encourage someone to do it, but don't lose
Yeah.
sleep over, am I qualified?
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. So when was the first time that you actually observed this in someone else, and you kind of looked at them and and you had this kind of audacity realization that you just mentioned, and thought to yourself, "Oh my God, like they're just going and doing it. Like they're no more qualified than me. Like if they
Yeah.
can talk the talk, why can't I walk the walk?" When was the first time you kind of noticed someone else doing that, and what happened, as you made that observation?
Well, I will tell you one that really stands out to me. I was invited to a summit. And at the summit, there were entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs were talking about their experience. And a couple of them had only been in business for a few years, and they were already doing seven figures. And I said, well, how did you come up with this idea? They're like, well, it wasn't really my idea. I just found this technology, and I got the funding for it by asking so and so, and they gave me the money, and I executed it, and we're about to exit in a couple years. And I'm just like, you're just saying this like you just asked for a couple $1 million, and they said, well, if you can prove that the product works, then yeah. So you just have to pitch and
Yeah.
say that this is going to work and believe it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that
Yeah.
is, I think what I was seeing in myself was, you have a good product, but you are not walking in this confidence that you had a
Yeah.
good product or service. You're thinking it, but it's not translating to your actions. So,
Right.
because you don't wholly believe it, that that you are someone that can do this, that you are someone who is worthy to be funded in the millions, that you are someone who has a
Right.
product that can exit or IPO. That is something I think was was very impactful. Just seeing them nonchalantly talk about how they scaled so fast without
Yeah.
without money, without a viable product. They just
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I want to ask a question about your grandfather, if that's okay. My understanding is that he had a number of grandchildren, one of which was you. And by the sounds of it, you were probably not the most qualified in terms of your cooking abilities. Why do you think he chose you to give the recipe to?
It's the question I'll be asking my whole life. I'll never get the answer, but what I would like to believe is that our relationship was one where he understood that if there was a task, that I would do it, and especially if it takes care of the family. Because he would dream out loud. We would walk in the hills of Tennessee, and he would just talk about his what he wanted to do with sauces, or what he wanted to do post retirement. And he would talk about having a whole family compound. He's like, can you imagine going on some land and you see all these houses, but every house on that property is your family. And I was like, how are you going to do that? And so my mentor was the one who listened to my life story and my relationship with my grandfather. And he said he ran out of time. He's still, the compound, the land, taking care of the family that was there. He's just saying, I don't have time left to do it, but you might be able to get this done. And I take that as, my why, the humility behind running Mutt Sauce, because I want to see it happen, even in the times where the sales numbers aren't matching. I'm still encouraged to keep going because I don't think I would be put on this journey to not be able to make it. And to get over the scarcity mindset, because at some point you have to accept wealth into your life. You have to say, my goal is to become wealthy, because that's what's going to get you to the goal of taking care of your family or taking care of multiple generations of your family the way that he dreamed.
I see. Interesting. Well, that's maybe a good point to pivot our conversation a little bit into the world of finances. And I think my understanding is you have some rather interesting perspectives on this, but let me start out by asking, how did you first become aware that you had a financial problem as it relates to the business?
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, there's a couple things. It started out, I wanted to buy a BMW with my $25,000. I did not have financial literacy growing up. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy a nice car because in life, my mom and I moved away from my grandparents' house. She wanted to be independent, and she moved into what was considered Section 8 housing, or the projects. So by, society standards, we were poor, but we weren't. I never felt poor. I never felt like we didn't have anything. But once you get around other people, other kids, they're the ones that say, oh, you got, you don't wear new stuff, or you live in the housing projects, or, and you start to feel like when I grow up, I just need to not look like I'm poor. I don't want it to appear that way. And I became fueled by that motivation to not look that way. And so the financial decisions that I would make were reflective of that. My mentor said, do you know what depreciating assets are? You are fawning over a car that's going to lose value the moment that you drive it off the lot. Why would you not put your money here? And then along the way, I learned pricing and like the margins in the food industry are not big. So you have to be very smart about the cost that the cost of operations, and then what you're passing along to your customer. And the only thing you can do is widen that gap, right? Cost of goods sold and the retail price. And I can't say that I did a great job throughout the years. At some points, I was learning lessons on net payments, learned that the hard way, where
As in payment terms?
payment terms, yeah. In the grocery industry, like you can give a ton of product to your client, and then they have 60 days to actually pay you.
Yeah.
So I had to learn net payments, and there'll be days where I'm waiting. The bills are piling up. And I'm just like, why have they not cut me this check? Like I got 2 days before everything falls apart. And that, multiply that by multiple years, it gets stressful. It's really stressful to maintain. The pandemic forced me to do a different business model. So we were mostly in-person events and festivals. I didn't even have a website. There was not a muttsauce.com e-commerce website. I was rocking my baby, newborn, March 2020, because we had zero projected revenue in March 2020. And I had to learn how to make money and never leave the house. So that, that pivot had to happen. It's never ending, and now that we've gone, back to normal, the people going back to grocery stores, and the questions arise like, are you going back in grocery stores? What's the strategy for going back in the stores? And because I manufacture my consumer packaged good, when people ask me where's the sauce, I'm saying where's the $40,000 to do every flavor that you want me to do. So it's always just having the capital to keep going. Have the capital,
Yeah.
keep going.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's definitely a lot. Was it a specific event or, observation about your bank account or anything like that that became the catalyst to trigger for you? Or was it just the culmination of a lot of stress accumulated over a lot of time that
Yeah.
got you to start paying more attention to this stuff?
Well, the net payments was a rock bottom because I was 1,500 in the hole. Not like I have $1,500 left. I looked and it said negative $1,500.
Oh, you were overdrawn. Wow.
I was overdrawn by $1,500. And it was because I had payments that were automated. I automated a lot of my things. So I had automated
Right.
payments that were hitting, and then a client who was like, I'll pay you by this day. So I'm over here trying to get receivables, like pay me before this date, or I'm really in trouble. And it was just like the perfect storm of they didn't do what they said they were going to do. All the payments hit and all the payments bounced. And I think I ended up in the hospital because I had a panic. I didn't even know I was having a panic attack. I felt like I was
Wow.
dying. It really felt like I'm having a heart attack and I can't breathe. And that's when the doctor was telling me, like, you have stress-induced anxiety. What is going on? And when I explained it to him, he's just like, why would anybody do that to themselves? Like, what is, what is that? But that's when I said, you can't.
That's such a great question about entrepreneurship. I love that quote. Why would
Why,
anyone do
why
that
would
to
you do
themselves?
that? So, I mean, we love it. I don't know. We're crazy. So I, that was the hard lesson of you cannot put yourself in this situation. You have to make sure that you diversify your funding, and even down to listening to people like Damon John who were telling people he worked at Red Lobster. So there were times where they had cash flow issues. He had to get a job in order to draw a salary for things not to bounce. And I took that advice. So I had to go over and find a government contracting job and recover and then go back and look at the business and say, let's get everything paid out and in the green and then really look at this because it can't operate in this net payment environment efficiently. It's not, my company couldn't operate in that effectively. So I think that was why e-commerce did work because it's direct to consumer. It's instant. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was tough. And I didn't have a source of capital because you hear
Much.
people saying, "Oh, my investors just gave me this wad of money." I don't have those. I don't have investors.
None of them floating around.
Mm.
Yeah. 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 I hear you on that one. So you, I gather, have gotten to the point now that you are actually working with other entrepreneurs and founders and teaching them and training them about finances. Is that right? Or tell me a little bit more about what you are up to on that
Yes.
front.
Because around the pandemic, I just started volunteering my time really to the Small Business Development Center. They have mentors, but they needed food and beverage mentors. And I would just do one-on-one consultations and talk to them about what they're going through. And I took for granted the fact that the experience that I've had a lot of different types of experience that people in the food industry would not get all of it. So the grocery experience, e-commerce experience, I've been on QVC, I've been on Shark Tank, we've done corporate accounts. So I was like, in every way a food business can operate, except for opening a restaurant, I have actually done it. But when I was looking at
Yeah.
how they could scale, I used a manufacturer. So I went from basically 0 to 100. But in between there, before opening a brick and mortar, you could go to a commercial kitchen. And I had joined a commercial kitchen when I moved to Washington, D.C. for a while. And I was like, this is a great resource for food entrepreneurs. You don't have to own the building, you just pay a flat fee and you make your food product. This is great. When I'm mentoring 2019, 2020, I'm asking them, like, where are the commercial kitchens in this town? They said there aren't any. And so the entity, the Downtown Dayton Partnership is what they're called, they connected me and two other founders. They had a commercial kitchen and they were renting out space. And they said, we're trying to teach these entrepreneurs, but we're not teachers. Like, we could run a kitchen, but we're not teachers. So we combined our experiences, opened up a commercial kitchen, and then I'm the director of Otace Foundation, and I curated Sharpen the Axe Financial Literacy School. So it is an online academy. Sometimes we have in-person workshops, but it is to teach financial literacy for food founders, which is a very niche education, because you can go to some of these big, business plan building type of accelerators, but they're not going to teach you how to get into H-E-B and Kroger, or your pricing structure for farmers markets is different from your pricing structure for QVC, which is different from your pricing structure for doing online sales. So a lot of them go into these situations with one price. And they wonder why they're losing money. And it's because you can't take that same cost of goods sold and retail price and spread it across all these experiences. Because in one, you might be making money, and the other one, you have negative margins.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's super important area. And we certainly share a passion and enthusiasm for
You
that
have a
topic.
passion for it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask a few closing questions here as we wrap things up. As entrepreneurs, we often look around for validation from, those around us. I gather, and you've mentioned a couple of things about this already, but I gather that you've learned a lot over the years about the places and the sources that you look to for validation. Could you kind of round that out for us? What are some of the key learnings that you've had about validation and where you get it from over the years?
Sure. So you can be validated or seeking validation from people who are no longer here. Just like I was with my grandfather at the beginning of the journey, I was just searching the stars for, what should I do? Am I doing the right thing? And if you seek external validation, you won't get anything accomplished if they come back and say no, because the person or entity you're asking to validate you is going to put their own biases and their own opinions into the answer that they give you. And I would say surround yourself with like-hearted people, because they don't always have to agree with you. Sometimes the most impactful people in your life are the ones who respectfully disagree, or they say, I love you enough to tell you no. And you need to surround yourself with those like-hearted people. Not necessarily seeking validation from them, but I would say do seek a different perspective. Don't seek out people who are just gonna fawn over every idea you have and think that it's great. There's so many entrepreneurs who have the issue of ego, where they can't be wrong. They have to be right. And I don't seek to be right. I just seek to be understood in a way. I'm not going to apologize for who I am. I'm not going to change who I am, but I do seek to be transparent so you know who you're dealing with. And on the validation, like, another thing about validation is what you have been given as an entrepreneur. The vision that you've been given is for you. And the people who are supporting you need to show respect for the fact that they don't see it. So if they're showing up to sell at farmers markets with you, it's not because they see your vision, it's just because they care about you. And the least that you can
Mm,
do is make them a part of the journey and not drag them along. So
mm,
I would leave you with that is um, only you know what you're supposed to be doing. And if it feels right, then go ahead and do it. If it seems crazy, then go ahead and do it.
mm.
But don't try to get consensus.
Yeah,
Don't operate by
yeah,
consensus.
absolutely. Uh, yeah, so true, so true. You mentioned just now like-hearted people, which I understand is different to like-minded people. Just for the sake of clarity, can you explain that difference for us and why is it important?
Right. So right when I had left my marriage, for example, I was in an apartment with no furniture. So when I left, I just left with my clothes and some boxes. At the same
Mm,
time, I was in the last, I guess you'd say, last phase of being vetted for the cover of a magazine that celebrated military spouses. And I
mm,
got a phone call while I was in this empty apartment that I made the cover of the magazine. And
mm,
so I went into this whole diatribe of why I'm not qualified to be the one. I told her everything I was going through at the moment, and they should pick
mm,
someone else. And her response basically was, "This is bigger than you." And when you're in
mm,
pain, that is a hard thing to hear someone tell you is you need to get over yourself.
mm,
Especially if you're feeling very vulnerable in sharing something so painful. But she was saying
mm,
uh, what mission that she had to tell stories of the triumphs of military spouses, and that they were more than just people holding posters at airports of welcome home. The military spouses were
mm,
not just women, they are men, because there's women going to war and going to combat, and their husbands are staying home. So there's male military spouses. So she said, in all the ways that they're leading in their homes, they're starting companies, and these companies have to survive multiple military assignments in different cities all over the world, that they are still
mm,
excelling. And you're doing this, and I'm trying to use your story again, your testimony,
mm,
to save people. I don't want you sitting here wallowing in this empty apartment. Now is not the time for
mm,
that. Now is the
mm,
best time for you to show up and show out.
mm,
And hearing that, I was like, she's like-hearted, because a like-minded person would be like, yeah, right now is not a good time, is it? Yeah,
mm,
well,
mm.
I'm just gonna pass right now, and
Yeah.
I hope everything works out. And she could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
She could have done that, but she knew that that's not what I needed at that moment.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. No, that's so powerful and such an important message. There are so many, people have such complex stories underneath, and we're all going through our own struggles and journey. And yeah, it may not have been the narrative that they initially set out to tell, but it was sounds like a damn important story and perspective to be sharing anyway. So good on you for following through with it. So let me ask you one last question here. I'm just blown away at your ability to, how to put it, I guess, the way you've survived the ups and downs of not only entrepreneurship, but life and everything it's thrown at you. And the way that you, as I said at the beginning, like the way that you have found a positive spin on so many of these challenging times that you've been through, I think it's really remarkable. Given the, many years experience you've had at doing this now, if you had an opportunity to turn back time and go and talk to a 21-year-old version of yourself, what would you say to her?
Oh, I would give her the quote that I got post divorce. But if you believe in something bigger than yourself, rock bottom will have a trampoline. And
Mm,
it took years before I respected the rock bottoms. I used to just complain and try to bury them and blank them out. And the more I tried to bury it, the worse it became. But if you look at it like all the building blocks that you need to become the person that you're ultimately supposed to become, to do the job that you were put here on earth to do, and if the puzzle pieces are the good moments and the bad moments, it's taking you twice as long to get to the I would say the baddest version of you. It's like the most dangerous version of you is built from all those bricks, all those pieces. And you have to use them all. You can't build who you are without them. So I had them discarded in a pile in a corner for so many years until it finally clicked. This is what you
Yeah.
need. You can't ignore those. You have to respect
Yeah.
those moments.
Yeah.
And I'm okay now. I think this is the journey of self-discovery of what the dash was supposed to mean. You arrive here, there's a dash, and when you leave, and what am I supposed to be doing in that dash? Now I
Mm-hmm.
know. Now I know
Mm-hmm.
how I'm supposed to pass the baton. Now I know that all the angst that I went through of 10 years of
Mm-hmm.
infertility and all those experiences were because I was being prepared to be David's mother, not anybody else's
Mm-hmm.
mother, David's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
cannot have been him if I did not take all those things and put them together. I could not
Mm-hmm.
have shown up as a keynote speaker and give a message that was going to help the person who comes to the stage after I'm done crying, saying, I was about to fold up everything until I
Mm-hmm.
heard you. So I had to embrace those things in order to become the person that they needed me to be in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Rock Bottom has a trampoline. I understand that's also the name of your book. Is that correct?
It is.
Which people can find on Amazon, or what's the best place to get a hold of it?
Yep, you can go to Amazon.com. They have a
Mm-hmm.
paperback and a ebook.
Okay, cool. And where are some of the other places that people can find you if they would like to learn a little bit more about you and all the interesting stuff that you're up to?
Sure, you can go to Charlynda Jean. That's charlyndajean.com. And that's if you want me to show up at your event and speak, or if you would like to work with me or any of the brands that are under my umbrella, Mutt Sauce, O Taste, Foundation, 688 Kitchen. And Mutt Sauce has Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Same
Mm-hmm.
with 688 Kitchen, 6888kitchen.org, or Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll include all those links in the show notes below. But Charlynda, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. You have taught me so much about the way to navigate the inevitable roller coaster that is not just entrepreneurship and small business, but also life. You've given me fresh perspectives on how and why to show up for the people around us. In your case, your son, David, and the many other people in your life. And yeah, you've certainly given me some things to think about when it comes to purpose and perspective and how to navigate through tough times. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your wisdom with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, awesome. Thank you again. That was really great. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you, and I'm glad that we were connected because you're doing some really great things too with financial literacy. I would hope that there's some way that we can collaborate at some point, um,
Yeah.
and continue helping some of these founders.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be more than happy to have another conversation about that. As I think I'm not sure if you saw on my profile, but I used to mentor at a accelerator program called Food Future Co, which
Hmm.
focused specifically on early stage food, bev, and ag tech startups. And part of what I'm doing with Future Ready, my CFO consulting business, I do like, one-on-one engagements like most other CFOs do, but I'm also very passionate about the earlier stage folks who often cannot afford a, fractional CFO engagement. And so doing a lot of work on, content education. I've got a kind of group-based product that I'm working on, which is an attempt to not only make, financial education and support more accessible, but it also adds some really interesting elements that you don't get through a one-on-one engagement. So it's like one of the things we're doing in that program is like bringing together everyone's data and numbers. So when we have a conversation about, product costs or, manufacturing, for example, I've got everyone's data on COGS as a percentage of revenue. And then I put together charts that shows how everyone compares to one another. And that's, I've come to appreciate, is a really powerful light bulb moment for a lot of founders when they can suddenly see how they compare financially to the other people in the room. It's like, ding, okay, yes, I've got a problem there. Like you can say to them, hey, your costs are too high and like you should do something about your costs. But when you actually put a chart in front of them and have a conversation in front of a bunch of other entrepreneurs about why they're the highest line on this whole chart, it's really powerful as a learning trigger, I found. So
I love that. I love that. And the accountability factor, we're trying to build something like at least the SOPs in our organization, in our kitchen, letting these founders know you're building teams and it's not the same as working at home. Like you have to have restaurant mentality every day. Even if your space isn't a restaurant, you need to practice the life that you want to live. And that's a big part of it, is just the financial stuff. Like their cost of goods sold, they're like, well, I just randomly buy some flour. Like you can't just make these random decisions because they add up financially. But maybe it is putting it in front of them. Like your flour and sugar costs this year could have been lower. And because of that, you lost the $1,000 that, you could have used on something else. I like that. Putting it in front of them and letting them see it.
Yep.
That's good stuff. So you've launched it already? It's already launched?
Yeah. I have a cohort 1 that is a little over halfway through now.
I love it.
It's a little over halfway through a 4-month program. I'm currently working on launching a cohort number 2, which I hope to get off the ground in July, actually.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I love it. Well, let me know how it goes, how they do when they graduate. It's fascinating. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, happy to keep in touch on that one, and sounds like we could have some interesting collaboration opportunities in the future. But
absolutely, I believe so. Great job on podcast. I don't know, how do you feel about it? Like,
I'm still getting the hang of it. I've definitely got some practicing to do, but I'm better than I was. So I'm getting.
I tell you, man, all you need is the audacity, because people start podcasts and they just.
Yeah.
They don't know. They're just going.
No, I definitely don't know. But no, the thing that really helped for me was changing my metrics on success. And I feel like you might have said something about this in your book too. But there was once a time when I would look at something like a podcast or, launching a course or hosting a, free live workshop or something. And my metrics for success were often unrealistically high. It's like, I want to sell whatever, thousands of dollars of product or have 100 people show up to this course and blah, blah, blah. And I learned that if you approach it like that, then you're probably going to overwhelm yourself with stress and anxiety. You're probably not going to do a very good job because you're feeling so much pressure. And what I've learned to do instead is say, listen, it's not about the financial reward or some vanity metric. This is about learning. And as long as I learn from this and get better for the next time I do it, then that's success. And one of the best ways to learn is to make mistakes. And
Absolutely.
the more the more mistakes and fuck ups you make, the
Yeah.
faster you learn, and the faster you learn, the faster you improve. So that for me was a huge unlock when I learned to just reorient my metrics for success and what I think about the outcomes should be.
And you're going to be very successful in doing so. I mean, that's the thing. What David Goggins says, do not let people criticize you for failures when they haven't even tried.
Yeah,
So you've
yeah,
you've failed 100 times, and some people haven't even tried what you're failing at. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
that's why I look at Mutt sauce, like by what by what measure am I saying that this company is successful? Because some people
mm-hmm,
would say it's wildly successful. But if
mm-hmm,
I'm over here saying we have to exit for X number of $1 million, then yeah, I'm never
mm-hmm,
going to feel like we accomplished what we're
yeah,
supposed to do.
yeah,
I have
yeah.
to sometimes just remind myself, like, this was hand poured by kids who looked like they were 12 in, in in a warehouse 10 years ago. So,
Yeah,
come a long way.
you sure have. You sure have. Well, keep on doing what you're doing. You're an inspiration to me, and I'm sure countless others. So
Likewise,
it's
you are
been
too.
lovely chatting with you.
You too,
Thank you.
Nate. Have a great day.